Hello there. This video is a demonstration of some of the photo editing options that are available to you in the app Photopea.com, which is identical, if not very similar, to software like Adobe Photoshop. So first I need to upload a photo that I'm going to be playing with for this demonstration, and I'm just going to be putting in a picture of myself here, and I'll show you around some of the options that we have to mess with this. First, you can notice the layer. Here's the photo layer right here. It's called main. There's also a layer called depth map. I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop this into the trash can that's down here. I'm not going to be using that or dealing with that during this demonstration. So first, I want to show you the various options that you have. So there's 5 ways that you can sort of manipulate a photo using Photopea, or these are the 5 basic ways. So the first way is the toolbar that's on the left side of the screen here, where you have several options. These are like your art supplies that you might have on your desk or table. Next is the edit and the image. So there's edit up here, where you can transform the photo or image, the image option where you can go to adjustments and select some of these options to play with. There's also the layer style or effect that you can play with. And then over here is the filter gallery and various filters that you can apply to your photo or image. Okay. So first, the most obvious one is the toolbar that's here on the left. Some of these you'll recognize, something like a paintbrush. So this might be black on your screen. And if it is, if you want to choose a color, you just click on the box and pick a color either over here or from these options down here. And I can increase the size of my brush. So most of these options are going to have various sliders, various ways that you can adjust each of these tools or art supplies. And then you can draw, paint, write, etc. directly onto the photo. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo, to take a step back. Be aware that some of these edits are going to be destructive, meaning if I just draw right on top of the photo layer right here, that's now part of that layer. So if I kept going and adding things all over the place, eventually you're going to go so far that you can't go backwards and fix it. So that's just going to be part of the photo. I didn't do that this time. Um, but something you might want to be aware of is that you can also work on a layer if you're going to be doing things like painting and drawing. So you can go down here to the bottom right, click on New Layer, this blank paper, and that'll create a new layer that's sort of like a piece of plastic or glass that's on top of the layer below it. So I can work on this layer if I'm painting and drawing. And if I hide that layer by clicking the eyeball to make it invisible, you can see that the photo underneath it is still the same. Okay. So that's just something I wanted to show you. And I'm going to delete that by dragging it down to the trash can down here. There's a lot of options that you can play with: paint bucket, gradient, text, stamping, paintbrush. And if you hold down these options, you'll see that there's a little triangle in the corner. So if you click on it and hold down any of those squares or icons that have a little triangle in the bottom corner, that means there's other options that are hidden there. So there's actually more options than even just right here. Okay. So we're going to keep this simple and move on. So next you have the edit option. So under edit, there isn't too much you can do, but you can go down to transform. That's where transform is. And you can either free transform or choose one of these different methods of transforming the photo, like distort, which will allow you to sort of move the individual bounding box corners around and to do things with your photo like warping it and transforming it. Okay. Now, if I want that to stay that way, I can hit the enter button and that bounding box will go away. Now that's a destructive edit because that is how that layer is now. There's nothing that I can undo. Um, if I continue on, I can't get back to this. Okay. But right now I've only done that, so I'm going to hit Control Z, undo it. Next is the image tab up here. And under image, there's a few options on the main drop down, like auto color, auto contrast, things like that. But you want to go under adjustments, and there's even more options down here. So under adjustments, you can play with things like the curves, which is like a more advanced way of playing with brightness and darkness. Um, I'll hit X because I don't want to keep that. Going back to image and then down to adjustments. You can play with things like the color, changing the hue. So each of these sliders gives you some fun options for things that you can do. Change the amount of color by changing the saturation, change the lightness or darkness, things like that. And going back to image tab, and you can go to something like invert, where it switches or reverses all of the colors. White turns to black, red turns to green, etc. But again, lots of options under image adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Z a few times to back out of that. We're going to skip layer effect for right now, layer styles, and we're going to go straight to filters. Well, actually, let's play with layers right now. I've been having a little trouble with the filter on my computer, making it run a little slow. So I'm going to go to layer next. And there's a couple of ways you can get to this. You need to be on the layer that you're trying to edit or manipulate. And otherwise this option will be grayed out. So you can go down to layer style and then click these options. Okay, and that'll bring up this menu where you can play with all of the different sliders. You can also get there by double clicking the layer, and that'll also bring up the same menu. So there's a lot of fun things you can play with here, although you're not going to see too much of what these can do right now because I have because this is just sort of one flat photo. It's not cut out at all. So say, for example, I want to go in here and put a color on top of this layer. So I could click color overlay. And then instead of black, maybe I want to do a magenta color. I'll hit OK. And then I can change the opacity of that layer of color. So it's basically just filling this entire layer with one color. And I can change the transparency of that color. So it's sort of like putting a piece of cellophane or colored plastic on top of a photo. Okay. But because this is all flat, there isn't too much more that I can do to it in this state. So I'm actually going to go back to the toolbar real quickly. I'm going to hit Control Z and undo that. Actually, let me go back real quickly. So I'm going to step forward, go back to that step, and I just want to show you over here, it says effect. So those styles or those effects are nested underneath this layer. So anything that you do to one of those layer effects or layer styles, you can hide, you can change. So that's really fun that you can turn different ones on and off. But let me go back here real quickly. So now it's saved all those times that I hit that icon. So that's why it's real easy to lose, not be able to go back to what your photo looked like before. Real quickly, I just want to sort of highlight, select some of this background. I'm using the magic wand tool, that's this tool, and I'm holding shift to select all of this background. It's basically trying to select all the colors that are next to each other. This isn't going to be a real clean delete. There's still going to be a little artifacting around, meaning like little pieces that I wasn't able to select. And you'll see that real quickly. So for example, now I have this transparent background so now I just have my face and shoulders to work with. And so that'll allow me to show a couple other interesting things. So for example, if I double click on that layer, now I can use things like, for example, stroke. Stroke is like an outline, and I can sort of outline something that's on a layer. So now that I've cut out the background, you can see this outline around my face and head. And it's also outlining the little artifacts. So I could go in and delete all these if I want to. I can uncheck that and make that go away. And now I can do things like play with maybe inner glow, where I can sort of create like a glowing effect. And there's also an outer glow, but you won't see that because of the clear background. So there's a lot of things to play with and try under the layer styles option. Drop shadows, things like that. I'm just going to X out of this because I don't actually want to keep any of those. And then last but not least, I want to go to the filter. So filters are like sort of algorithms. They're programs that edit the photo in certain stylized ways. So for example, I can go down to something like pixelate, and let's see what happens if I hit crystallize. So it's almost kind of like a sort of a mosaic sort of effect. Um, and as I move the slider, you can see that it's changing how many little cells, little shapes are making up that image. I'm going to hit the X. I don't want to keep that. There's several options down here when you click on filter, but also a lot of them are, there's even more under filter gallery. So if you click filter gallery, it has a whole range of sort of artistic filters that you can apply to your image. So there's a lot of fun ones here. Let's see what happens. And it may have already selected glowing edges. I think it did. And there's also a bunch of sliders. So for example, let's see if I move this, yeah, up a few times. Now it's widening the edges. I can play with the smoothness, and let's see if that will change. And each one of these sliders does different things, so I'm not going to go through every single option, every single slider, but there's a lot of cool and different filters that you can play with. Some of them will um, they all do very different things. So these are really fun to play with. And of course, you want to play with the sliders as well, so you can fine tune the effects you're going for. Now I click sponge. Some of these, um, maybe because of the file size that I'm working with, the large file, it's having trouble with some of these, so it was running a little slow there. So let's see if I can click on Neon Glow. So that's really fun. And then change the options a little bit. All right, so I'm not going to keep any of these, but again, just to review, we talked about the toolbar that's usually on the left here. We talked about edit, which includes the transform options. We took a look at image and then went down to adjustments to see all of the options there. We went under layer and played with the layer styles, which again you cannot get to either through this top menu or that you can double click on the layer to find those styles. And we went over the filters that are available. So these are just some of the options, the 5 basic options you have for editing photos in Photopea. I hope this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. Take care.